And on the field this week, Big Cat, Week 10, who's under pressure? It's our Friday tradition. Because they didn't text me the trivia question, I assume you are asking me an incredibly difficult question that I will not know the answer to, and you'll have the first pick in the draft.
Okay, it's not actually a difficult question. It's a question to find out if you are aware of this NFL season. So Phil Rivers had played 10 games this year and leads the NFL in passing yards. Aside from Rivers, who leads the NFL in passing yards? Who's number 2 right now?
Matt Ryan.
No, come on, Mike.
That was Matt Ryan.
Tom Brady. It's Tom Brady. Matt Ryan's not even in the top 5.
I thought that. Well, you know why they haven't played? They've played one less game. All the guys who are up there have played 9.
Well, and also Matt Schaub played a game.
Yeah, I don't. Oh, that's right.
That's a terrible pick.
The Falcons have the number 1 passing offense. I thought it was some sort of a trick. The Falcons do have the top passing offense.
Phil Rivers, Tom Brady, Russell Wilson, Matt Stafford, Aaron Rodgers. That's your top 5 right there. Matt Stafford, my dark horse MVP. Okay, most pressure.
That ain't happening.
All right, most pressure. Let's start. It's every single week, Mike. It is every single week. I actually don't think there's any pressure on Mitch Trubisky because the jury's kind of out on him. The pressure is on Matt Nagy because if the Bears do not win another game, if the Bears go maybe, let's even say 1-7 down the stretch, Matt Nagy could be in trouble, could he not? Because the expectations were so high this year, and they have failed so significantly. So I think Matt Nagy's under pressure. Whether it's he should bench Mitch Trubisky and start and put in Chase Daniel to make this offense look like a real offense, or change up how they run the offense through Mitch Trubisky so that they can get the most out of him. Matt Nagy was brought to Chicago to be an offensive guy. He was brought to Chicago to get Mitch Trubisky on track. Both of those things have failed. So I think the rest of this season, and especially this week, against a team that they should be able to beat at home, Matt Nagy's under pressure.
You know, Ben McAdoo got whacked during the season after he took the Giants to the playoffs, right? And the Giants lost in the playoffs, and then it kind of hovered over them, and they went through that whole Eli Manning thing, and when do you bench him? And it was just one bad mistake after another for Ben McAdoo, and the next thing you know, he's gone. So I don't rule out anything at this point. Maybe Matt Nagy could get whacked during or after the season because he is supposed to be the offensive genius, and he clearly isn't. And just because he's won Coach of the Year, that doesn't mean anything. That doesn't give you lifetime job security. Plenty of guys who have won Coach of the Year have ultimately been fired, not necessarily the next year. But at some point, you have to ask yourself, maybe it's not Trubisky. Maybe it is. Maybe it isn't. Maybe Matt Nagy isn't using Trubisky the way that he needs to use Trubisky. And this is one of the great disconnects for a lot of coaches. You have your system, and you become so beholden to your system, you don't want to make it flexible to suit the guys you have. The best coaches take the guys they have and design the system and the plays and the strategy to fit the skills and abilities of the players they have. So if Trubisky isn't working in Nagy's offense, then Nagy needs to revise his offense to get the most out of Trubisky, period. And at some point, it is on Nagy. Do the things that Trubisky can do. Don't do the things he can't do. And that's the end of it. And that's the simplicity of it. And that's lost on Nagy. So I agree with you on that. All right, first pick for me. I mean, we had his picture on the graphic at the start of the hour. Of course, it's Kirk Cousins. It has to be Kirk Cousins. This is the latest chance for him to break the narrative, just like Tony Romo used to have that narrative, that in a big spot, in a big game, he would throw an interception or fumble the ball or fail to execute the hold on a potential game-winning field goal. That's when it first popped up, and it stayed with him for years, and he eventually broke that narrative. This is the latest chance for Kirk Cousins to break it. And the longer it lasts, the harder it is because you're more aware of it each and every time. And if he doesn't do it now, then when they play the Seahawks on a Monday night coming up in a few weeks, it's going to be even worse. When they play the Chargers on a Sunday night, unless that game gets flexed, week 15, it's going to be worse. When they have the Packers on Monday night, week 16, it's going to be worse. He's got to break it because every time he fails to break it, the harder it's going to be to break it the next chance he gets.
Okay, I like that pick. I had it as well, so we agree there. My next pick is going to be Pat Shurmur, the New York Giants head coach, which I don't know if he's going to be that head coach for long. He's playing the Jets this weekend. The dynamic in New York will always be the Giants are the premier franchise and the Jets are kind of the little brother. So Pat Shurmur, where the wheels are kind of falling off for the Giants. You know, they had the Daniel Jones switch. They look like they had some life. They have been bad and bad coaching ever since. If they lose to the Jets, who are reeling themselves, I think that is a big, big, big problem for Pat Shurmur. You mentioned Ben McAdoo, who got fired after going to the playoffs. Here's something that links Pat Shurmur and Ben McAdoo as well. Mike, other than just benching Eli Manning, I mentioned this quote earlier in the show. Dan Duggan, who is a reporter for, I don't know where he is, but he covers the Giants. He said that when at the press conference, Pat Shurmur was asked how losing wears on him, he said, "I'm built for this," right? Ben McAdoo, 3 weeks before he was fired, when talking about losing, "I'm built for this." So,
oh, God.
Yeah, there's precedent here, Mike. The guy who benches Eli Manning, the guy who says, "I'm built for this" when talking about losing, that guy ends up fired. I think this will be an embarrassing loss for the Giants if they can't beat the Jets here, and there will be a conversation that's going around in the city, and people will start talking that Pat Shurmur needs to go.
Yeah, and, I feel like whoever loses this game, the head coach is going to have more pressure. I feel like for whatever reason, though, until Woody Johnson comes back from the UK where he serves as the U.S. ambassador, Gase is going to have a little bit of leeway because of the contract, because of Joe Douglas there as the GM, and Douglas was hired by Gase. They're going to get another year, I think. I don't know. If it continues with the dysfunction that we've seen in recent weeks, maybe not. But I'm going to stay in that same game, and I'm going to go to the quarterback, Sam Darnold, because he's the guy who was the handpicked franchise quarterback to turn the Jets around. And he's got an apples-to-apples opportunity to compete with Daniel Jones. Even though they're never on the field at the same time, it was always Brady and Manning. It's this guy versus that guy, quarterback versus quarterback. Who's the franchise quarterback? Daniel Jones has looked much better this year than Darnold. And Darnold had that great game in his first game back from mono. AFC, Offensive Player of the Week in the win over the Cowboys. Since then, seeing ghosts the following Monday night, he's fallen apart. He's got to have a good game against Daniel Jones, or the narrative in New York is going to be the Giants got their franchise quarterback and the Jets blew their chance to do it.
Okay, that's a good pick. That is a good pick. Sam Darnold. It's not only Sam Darnold been struggling, but it's the same things that were happening at USC, and that makes you nervous. It's actually the interception bowl between Sam Darnold and Daniel Jones. Both guys, the big red flag was turnovers in college, and both guys have been turnover prone in the NFL. All right, my last pick, Mike, I'm going to go with my guy, and I hope he can pick it up. I hope he can play well. It's Baker Mayfield. Because the talk in Cleveland, I think a lot of the blame has been on Freddie Kitchens. I think he has gotten a lot of this guy needs to go. Baker is going to eventually be under a lot more heat as things, get worse and worse unless the Browns start winning right now. So I think he's under pressure. I think he, more than anyone on that team, wears the losses in terms of it affects him, and I'm saying that in a good way. I want a guy like Baker Mayfield who shaves his mustache and says, "I don't deserve this mustache, and I want to win so bad it makes me sick." That's the type of guy you want as your franchise quarterback. I think he's taking these losses worse than anyone on the Browns, again, in a good way, because he cares that much. So I think he's going to come out and he's going to play very well on Sunday, but he is under pressure.
Yeah, I agree with you. He's under pressure, and I do think that he will play well and that the Browns will get their third win of the season. Whether that continues, we'll see. I'm going to go, if we're going to talk about quarterback duels, Jared Goff versus Mason Rudolph should be an easy win for Jared Goff. But to go into Heinz Field in November in Pittsburgh, and we saw what happened to Goff last year when he had to go to Soldier Field. Now, the forecast could have been worse. As of right now, the wind chill, when you factor in how it's going to be, it's going to gust up to 20 miles an hour. Right during game time, it's going to be in the mid-40s. That's how it's going to feel for Jared Goff. And let me tell you, if that's the official Pittsburgh forecast, it's going to be 5 to 7 degrees colder, or it's going to feel 5 or 7 degrees colder at Heinz Field on those rivers. That turf, it's better than it used to be, but it's a tough place for the visiting team, especially a California team in November with a quarterback who has a track record of not playing well in those moments where the weather conditions aren't ideal. It could be, like I said, Could be a lot worse. It's not supposed to rain. It's not going to be really cold. I mean, they could have hit a window here over the last week or so where it would have been a lot more difficult for Jared Goff. But this is his first test this year outside where it's not perfect conditions, and the pressure's on him to outduel Mason Rudolph, who, based on how Mason Rudolph has looked for most of the time that he's played this season, Jared Goff should be able to do it. If it was in L.A., it's a no-brainer. It's in Pittsburgh, and I think Goff's going to have his hands full.
I like the turf talk there. The turf, it's okay, but it's not as bad as it used to be, but it's all right, so okay, that's fine. I don't think Jared Goff's
accurate description.
Sure.
That's an accurate description of the quality of the turf in Pittsburgh. You don't think Jared Goff's under pressure?
No, every quarterback's under pressure every single week. But the other thing that I don't agree with is that Jared Goff playing poorly he's got a track record of playing poorly in bad conditions. It was one game last year against the Bears.
That's a track record. That's it. There's your track record.
Come on, you're a stats guy. You know that's not a good sample size.
How many times has he been on the track? That's his track record.
Disappointed in you, Mike.
When we return, I'm going to tell everybody how much Big Cat bet on the Raiders last night. Before we do that, though, Big Cat's got Matt Nagy, Pat Shurmur, Baker Mayfield for the most pressure in Week 10. I've got Kirk Cousins, Sam Darnold, Jared Goff.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.